Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our second episode of our podcasting series, Press A to Climb Soapbox. Here we spend a little bit of time talking about something in video gaming, something we like or dislike, or something we just want to discuss in some way, shape, or form. With me today are two fellow soapboxers that I've got Tymo from our first soapbox.
Hello, YouTube.
And I also have ScaryUncleDevin, who was also in our first soapbox, and he's been a part of our Castle Crasher videos.
Hi, guys.
Tymo, of course, has been a part of everything that's been on the channel so far. So, so today, what we're going to talk about on this soapbox is we're going to kind of do an analyzation of game mechanics, kind of from a broad spectrum point of view, narrowing it down on if we have something specific that we want to talk about, like something from a specific game or a specific series, but more from a broad spectrum point of view of like game mechanics that are, popular that maybe shouldn't be, or things that like game mechanics that aren't done that we wish were done in more games, just different things like that. I'll explain to everyone all these topics kind of spur off of something that spurs the thought in my head at some point in time, and I try to remember all these topics so we can discuss them here. And what spawned this topic for me was I was watching one of the streamers that I watch, Lag TV Maximus Black, Mr. Maximus Black from great Lag TV fame. I was watching him stream, and he was actually streaming League of Legends. And I don't know how much experience either of you have with League of Legends or Dota or HOT or any of those Dota style
About one
games.
round.
Absolutely zero.
Well, at least have either of you played Warcraft 3?
No. Yes.
Or any Blizzard RTSs in general?
I don't
Devin?
Blizzard.
I can't say I necessarily blame you in that. I haven't Blizzarded since Warcraft 3, so I can't say I blame you.
StarCraft 2 right when it came out, but that was
I have
about
played
it.
the campaign to StarCraft 2, but I played it on Albert's Battle.net account, on Meat's Battle.net account, because I didn't want to pay for it, which is a whole nother soapbox.
Yeah, I was playing. I was playing on Ben's.
On Ben's. Well, I was watching him play. I was watching him play League of Legends, and one of the things from the original Dota, Dota started as a custom map for Warcraft 3.
I know that.
So all of its base game mechanics were pretty much drawn from Warcraft 3. I mean, they edited things as much as they could with the Warcraft 3 map editor, which, certainly was no slouch. That it had a decent amount of things that you could actually change and incorporate into the game, but you could never edit like the base mechanics of the game.
Right.
And I was watching him play League of Legends, and it was at the very start of the game, and one of the things you used to be able to do that people did in Dota was they would creep block, where the minions that move down the waves, if you stood in front of them, you could disrupt their pathing AI and make them kind of like bunch up for a brief second. It was basically a way to make your minions move slower, and the whole reason is you wanted to draw their minions closer to your turret, because that way your turret would kill the minions and you would get like the experience and a little extra gold. It's a whole metagaming philosophy in that with the whole Dota, the way that Dota plays. And in League of Legends, that's not something you can do. And the reason why this made me think of this is I like that League of Legends doesn't do that, because one of the things that's always aggravated me about Blizzard's RTS mechanics is their units are dumb. Their pathing AI is horrible. Their actual AI of the units themselves is terrible. Now, when you look at the type of RTSs that Blizzard makes, and they're definitely more micromanagement intensive than some of something on a large scale, like the Total War series or something like that, where it's you're controlling thousands of units. You can't necessarily have the, manual dexterity to be giving each 1,000 of them an intricate, individual command, even in groups of, even if you want to group it into, so you have 10 groups, that's still 100 units per group, and that's kind of hard to micromanage that.
Right.
So you have to, you have to give it sufficient AI to stand on, so where if you're not directly controlling it, at least can make some good judgment decisions on its own. And that is completely lax from Blizzard RTSs. And that's one of the things I loved that League of Legends took out, because I'm like, okay, it made for some interesting metagaming, which there were people who were more interested in than I was. There were people who always got angry at me because I would never creep block. And there were always the people who were like, why aren't you creep blocking? And I'm like, because I don't want to. Because screw you, that's why. Yeah. And I kind of liked that League of Legends removed it, because the only reason that Dota 2 has it is because the original Dota map has it. Everything in Dota 2 is that way, pretty much. It kept everything that the original Dota had from the custom map on Warcraft 3. So, creep blocking was a thing in Warcraft 3, but the only reason why creep blocking was a thing in the original Dota is because of the terrible unit having AI from Warcraft 3. And it's like, if these units had any sort of semblance of actual intelligence, they would have seen that 30 feet in front of them, there's somebody standing in their path. Why don't we just kind of walk around him?
A little bit.
You're applying too much logic to the situation.
Yeah. But...
yeah,
so
you're
that's
not a minion. You don't understand how minions operate.
Shh! Don't question the orders. Just go straight. Keep to the path. Don't break the rules, Jerry. You're a goddamn. You're pushing the boundaries, Jerry. You're gonna get us all in trouble. Yeah. So that's what spawned it all from me, and I got to thinking about like games that keep mechanics that maybe I'm not that big of a fan of, or games that take away mechanics that I'm not a fan of. And the first thing immediately that popped into my head was the Elder Scrolls series. Because, especially with the last 3 games, there has been some huge shifts in some of their game mechanics.
Yeah.
The biggest one clearly is the shift from Morrowind to Oblivion, where they went from the more dice-based system, where it's like every time you swung a sword, it still rolled a dice. Even if you struck the enemy's model with your sword model, it would still roll a dice to see whether or not you hit. And if you had a really high skill, then, you didn't need a high roll result in order to hit. But if you had a really low skill, it's like you could swing your sword at a dude who's literally like, at arm's reach from you, and you could be hitting him with the sword, quote unquote, but still never hit him and do any sort of damage.
Really? It's been a long time since I've played Morrowind.
Oh, no, yeah.
It was the same reason why you could die from a rat at level 1.
The best was bows and arrows in Morrowind. Oh my god, those were hilarious.
I hit you in the face.
No, yeah,
you
it's
took
literally
no damage.
It's literally because the bows and arrows kind of functioned off of they functioned off of the same mechanics, and so it's that thought of as the arrow gets farther out, it may stray or deviate from your intended path. But the problem is if your skill was the low, it's basically like the lower your skill was, the more incredibly inaccurate you were. It's like, and if you had a really, really low skill at the very, very beginning, it was so hard to try and use bow and arrows from the beginning of the game. And you had to pretty much use nothing but bows and arrows because you really needed to level up your skills high in order to be worth a damn. And I cannot tell you how many times, like me and my brother and me and Meat, we'd be playing that game, and it's like, you pull the bow back, you got it prepped and ready, but you have a severely low bow skill, and literally it's like there's a rat at your feet, and you're like holding the bow against his head. That's how close he is to you. And you pull back and let go. Miss. It's like, I literally had the tip of the arrow touching his head before I let go of the bowstring. What did I trip while I was letting go? Pulled it hard right?
Lightning quick trip there.
Yeah.
Just boom.
It's like I had a sneeze, and I was like, achoo! And let it go flinging high right and killed somebody's cat off in the distance. It's like, that's what it was, and like they changed that for Oblivion. It's like skills for weapons really just affect on how much damage you do.
Yeah, that's what I remember from playing the Elder Scrolls stuff. But like I said, it's been a long time since I played Morrowind.
Yeah, it's like that was one change where I was like, oh, thank God.
Well, and especially like when you're trying to like stealth through something, and you're like, okay, I've got my bow prepped and ready. When I see somebody, I'm just gonna attack them.
Yeah.
And you see them and you miss. But now they know you're there.
Yeah, but then they hear the bow go off.
They go,
they
what was
see
that?
your arrow go whizzing, not really past them, you know? It's whizzing off into the distance, despite the fact that you had that beaten up on them for a long time. Yeah, no, that was definitely one mechanic that I was like, oh, thank God that they changed this around, because holy crap, that was annoying. I mean, I understand that, you know, especially in the earlier Elder Scrolls games and early video games in general, you know, the clever masking of a dice roll mechanic was pretty much how almost everything worked, because that's kind of what the technology required. You didn't have the advanced technologies to determine things like model boundaries and whether or not two models collide. It was kind of like, you know, are you within this distance of a model?
And, you know, differentiating headshots versus, you know, an arrow to the knee.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to program dice rolls than it is hitboxes and model collision.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes complete sense.
But still, for Morrowind, it felt like at the time, I mean, you know,
yeah, for that point in time to base stuff on dice rolls,
for it to still
antiquated.
be so heavily dice roll based was so bad. It was so terrible. I was like, I love this game, and in a lot of ways, I do still like Morrowind better than Oblivion, but that one mechanic was like such a great change. I was like, oh, thank God this got changed around, because this was horrible, and it sucks because that's, you know, that's a huge, huge part of the game, you know, especially if you want to play, you know, a more combat-based character where you're like, I don't care if I can talk it or convince it to do things, I just want to kill it. It's like, well, in the early game, good luck.
Yeah. That's going to be a little rough.
No, it was like, it was, I remember, like, bows and arrows were useless on you unless you picked, I think it was like the Wood Elves, who got, like, the best bonus to bows and arrows from level 1. So it's like you had to pick a Wood Elf, and you had to pick bow and arrow as one of your primary skills. And it's like, if you didn't do that, it was like bow and arrows were useless. You might as well forget them for the rest of the game, because it's going to be so low to start out that there's no way it's going to be useful for you in order to level it up to somewhere where it is useful.
Yeah.
But on the inverse of that, one of the things that I disliked in the change from Morrowind to Oblivion was the reduction in skills. I hated that. I missed my medium armor. I missed the, like, God, there were like 8 or 10 weapon
done that
skills
each time now.
That's something that's the reason why I have not personally played Skyrim, is because I hate
one of several reasons I can imagine.
No, well, not terribly. I mean, everything I've seen about the game looked great, and it looked great until I kept seeing, like, until I found out how much they even further from Oblivion dumbed down the more RPG skill and attribute mechanics. Like, you don't even have attributes in Skyrim anymore. The only things you level up on your levels are you either level up your health, your mana, or your stamina.
Right.
You don't select which attributes to level up. You don't have an attribute screen where you see how much strength, dex, and constitution and all those different stats you have. And I was like, what the heck? Where did all my attributes go? First you robbed me of like half of my skills from Morrowind to Oblivion. It might not have been that drastic. It was pretty drastic though, especially when it came to weapons.
No, yeah.
Like, there are 2 weapon skills in Oblivion. There were like 10 in Morrowind. It's like there was like long swords, short swords, axes, clubs, pole arms, thrown weapons, bow and arrow. There were a couple of other ones too. I think axes had one-handed and two-handed. I think clubs were the same way. But it's like there were so many weapon skills in Morrowind, and Morrowind had the light, medium, and heavy armor, and in Oblivion they went just to light and heavy.
Yeah.
I was like, so sad.
I would say, in regards to your weapon thing, yes, they did dumb it down, especially in Skyrim, but the way they kind of did it too is so you have your single-handed, you have your two-handed weapons, and those have subclasses to them. As you start leveling them up, one of them goes down the path of you're using clubs, one of them goes down the path of you're using swords, one of them goes down the path of,
Skyrim did try to help things with the like specialization, the like perks, I guess you could call them. I don't remember what their actual name is.
Are
they called perks?
Yeah.
It was like every couple of levels you could pick like perks, and that gave you a bonus to something related to that skill. And that wasn't too bad. I mean, that
it was
can
an
be
interesting
nice.
way of replacing classing. In the sense that really classing at that point really was which Atriarch stone you would activate, and you didn't have to stick with one. If after a while you're like, okay, I'm done leveling magic, or I'm done leveling my my thieving skills, you could go back and find any other Atriarch stone and switch what you were working on.
Yeah,
and it only gives a certain potential boost, and it's really still not a great idea to start switching around. Really, you probably only want to do that during the first, at most. By level 20, you got to decide what you're doing.
Yeah,
and you pick 3 or 4 of the main perk paths to work on, and like I roll heavy armor right now.
Yeah,
I don't have anything in light armor at all. I have everything in heavy. I do some archery stuff, but I don't put much in there. Most of the stuff I put into my single-handed because I use one-handed and then I have a shield. So but. I thought it was interesting how they took away the idea of classes, and even your freaking race doesn't really give you much of a bonus anymore.
See, that's something I was sad about. I mean, I was very sad. I see it more and more in like the like RPG type games where it's like you pick a race and it's mostly like a cosmetic decision. It's like I miss the days when like picking your race was like
a big
important decision. In Oblivion, your starting stats didn't vary by a whole lot, but your starting stats did vary depending on which race you picked, and then you got bonuses to certain skills based on which race you pick, and every race had a special racial power that was, that was specific to that race in some way, shape, or form. Like I remember one of the races in Oblivion, I think you just didn't regenerate mana, but you had the chance to absorb. You had like just innately, you had a crazy chance to absorb the damage of absorb spells used against you and convert them into mana, which was an interesting race to play. It was an interesting way to play.
That changes a bit.
No, that wasn't a race. That was one of the zodiac signs you could pick. That was one of the zodiac signs, because there were the zodiac signs in Oblivion also, which I thought were pretty cool. And I don't know if they have those in Skyrim.
That's effectively the Atriarch stones.
Okay. But see, you couldn't change your zodiac sign. That was something you picked at the beginning of Oblivion.
Yeah, right.
That was one of the, I think it was like the, I don't remember what it was called. There's a word that I'm trying to, it was like the construct or something like that. And yeah, it was like you never read it. You had no mana regeneration, but you had the chance, like a really good chance to just absorb spells and turn it into mana, which was always interesting.
That's kind of cool.
It was an interesting concept.
There's some equipment kind of like that. I actually happen to have, I don't use it. I'm kind of holding on to some of my items right now, but I have I think it's a robe or a hood.
Yeah.
It'll absorb mana, through spells instead.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I've seen
kind of the same, but it does come back. You come back to the same point. Even in Oblivion, your race had features, your class had features, your zodiac sign had features.
Yeah.
Gone.
Yeah, and some of those things, like I can understand. I kind of liked how they went away from the whole primary and secondary skills thing. Which that's another thing they've been sequentially dumbing down, because in Morrowind you had primary skills, secondary skills, and tertiary skills.
Right.
And it was basically like your primary and secondary skills were what you really worked on, and your tertiary skills were like those were usually the ones that like after you maxed out your primary and secondary, maybe you want to get around to maxing those if you really had nothing better to do with your time. But it's like if you maxed out your primary and secondary skills and were satisfied with that, you're just like, yeah, whatever. Those tertiary skills can just stay there where they are. And then in Oblivion they cut it down to just the primary and secondary. And now in Skyrim, they completely have done away with that.
And that's a change I like. Because
I kind of do like that change because of the fact that your leveling was dependent on, like, leveling up your primary skills was what got you more levels in Oblivion. It got you levels a lot faster, which was a thing that I thought was kind of dumb, because then it was like to get to a higher level in the game, it was more beneficial for you to pick primary skills that did not start out at a very high level. Because then they would level up faster, so then you would level up faster by contingency, and they would have the potential for more level gain, which means you as a whole character had the potential for more level gain. And it's like, I remember picking some classes where it's like, I had a primary skill. There were some race and primary skill combinations where you could get a primary skill that started in 35 or 40, and it's like, well, that's awesome because at the beginning of the game, that's a pretty decently high
early
skill.
Game, that's good.
But then the problem came is I only have 60 levels to gain in this, and then it's done.
Yep. Yeah, I remember running into boxes with that where you pick. I was like, I'm going to take the primary skills for stuff I use all the time, and generally I had created a character to use those skills. Like you said, they start higher.
Yeah.
So endgame, you get screwed out of 20 levels.
Yeah, there's a lot.
And I
it's
end
like
up
you
running
had to
around
pick
with that stupid bow.
Yeah, you had to I was gonna run around with a bow at level 5 trying to kill things. It's like you had to pick a kind of a combination of one or two skills that were high, so that you had some good skills at the very beginning of the game to be your primary skills. But you had the rest of your primary skills had to be low level shit skills, so that way that you had room to grow your character. I agree. That definitely was a mechanic change that I thought was that's a good idea. I like the idea of being able to have certain skills start higher than others. But I like the concept of your leveling is now tied to, your leveling of all of your skills evenly instead of these few skills being your primary leveling focus. And it's these other skills, yeah, they help you out, but I think you can half or a third of as much of a level from secondary skills in Oblivion as you do from primary.
Yeah, I don't remember.
It's crazy low compared to primary skills.
But the way they,
because I remember Albert. One of the ways that he managed to get far, he managed to get far in Oblivion because he had picked heavy armor as one of his primary skills, but he ended up never using it. He ended up always using light armor. So then light armor, he maxed out light armor, and heavy armor is still down at 20 because he never used it. And so, but then that kind of screwed him though, because his light armor skill was, it was nice because his light armor skill was really high, but since it was a secondary skill, it was not contributing to his leveling up as much as if he had been spending that whole time leveling heavy armor.
Yeah. And see, I like the new system just for the way I play. Devin was talking about the way he puts his points into stuff. I play very differently, apparently. I level everything. I take a few perks here and there, but I've maxed heavy armor. I've almost maxed light armor. One-handed is maxed. I'm working on two-handed. And then all the magic schools are kind of even for me because I just ping-pong around whatever I feel like using.
Yeah.
So I end up playing very differently, and with those older level systems, eventually I start running around trying to illusion spell people to death, and it just doesn't work out.
Well, I would always how I always did in Oblivion is I always had what my character was focused on, and I always max that first. I would always completely focus on that, and then it was from then on I would try and pick up the other things here and there if I really wanted to. One of the things I used to do in Oblivion, I don't know how well it will work in Skyrim, but I used to do it in Oblivion. It worked fantastically. On my non-magic characters, I would go by the lowest level. There was Alteration was the nice way to level Alteration is you go and buy the lowest level shield spell to shield yourself. I think it was Illusion if you picked up Detect. I think Detect the Life was in the Illusion school. And it was the way I played Oblivion and Morrowind, I ran everywhere. I fast traveled hardly at all.
When
I hardly
was
ever
a
fast
skill.
traveled. Yeah, and especially, oh god, I can't tell you. In Morrowind, I jumped everywhere.
Oh yeah,
I would run and jump. I would jump all. I just
constantly
constantly be pressing the space bar as I'm moving across the field, just constantly jump.
No,
jump,
yeah,
jump.
I remember. I think in Morrowind it was because athletics was a skill, or acrobatics. That's what
Acrobatics, yeah.
You
Acrobatics was in. It was in Morrowind. It was still in Oblivion too.
I think it was in Morrowind that I did it, because that's where I seem to remember it from. But you gained a level bonus a little bit in acrobatics from fall damage.
Yes.
So
yes, if you took damage but it didn't kill you, you got a little bit of bonus to the amount of experience you gained from that. Yeah, from that jump.
So what I would do is I would always run everywhere like you were saying, but I would tend to run like up mountains and jump
and then
off
jump
and then
down the hill.
Restoration magic while I'm running.
Yeah, no, I remember that from Morrowind. Yeah,
I did not play enough Morrowind to learn any of these tricks.
Oh no, there were so many
That's
awesome.
the worst Elder
I just
Scrolls
remember
game
jumping
you could actually
everywhere.
you could max out your sneak skill in Morrowind in the starting town because there's the little like flame bowl lighthouse type thing. If you get up on the top of it and just stand, nobody ever comes up there, and you can sneak. And you're registered as within line of sight of people, but nobody ever sees you. Because you're, you can position yourself so they can't legitimately see you because they have to, like, look through the, the kind of spillover awning of the lighthouse. And they never come up there. So nobody ever actually comes close enough to really see you. And you can just stand there, sneaking, and max your, just leave it. Like, you could stand there sneaking and, like, go to work and max your sneak skill.
As I recall,
I'm
pretty
trick.
sure the reason you're supposed to go up there in the first place is because you're watching that one guy, Farangor.
Yep.
And he's supposed to put something into a stump.
Yeah, you have to watch the guy at night. Cause
hang out there forever.
No, yeah, if you just hang out there, you can just level up your sneak skill if you're sneaking. Yeah, you can just set yourself to sneaking and just stay there, and it will just rack up your sneak skill.
That's great. I'm
yeah.
impressed that you remember a character name of an NPC from a game that
That's,
came out.
that's impressive.
Like
No,
12 years ago.
more accurately,
than that.
I'm surprised you remember the character from an NPC from one of the starting Elder Scrolls towns.
Yeah.
Holy shit! I don't remember any of the names of the characters from that starting town in Morrowind. I remember some of the NPCs from Oblivion. And of course, there's always like Dagoth from Morrowind, but he was like the main bad guy. So
I may not have played much of Morrowind, but I started at least a good 24 characters in that game.
Me and my brother used to do that
all
too.
your time in that
I
starting
would
town.
build characters up just to see what perks and stuff they would get out of it.
Yeah.
And I would spend all this time doing that, and then I'd go and I'd start a few of the first round, the first areas. Eventually, I'd meander off to some of the other towns, find a Silt Strider, go somewhere else.
See, I love
Striders.
character creation, but my hatred of repeating quests would never allow me to do that. Never. I get so frustrated having to do things more than like twice.
But yeah, that's the Elder Scrolls series are definitely kind of been, ever since Morrowind, it's been like every new one has something that I like, something that I hate. Like the ability to dual wield any two things in Skyrim was awesome, but at the same time, the ability to hold a sword and a shield and still be able to cast a spell was something I was sad was gone away. Like I said, one of the things I used to do was I would just get the lowest level shield spell, and since I would run everywhere, I would just keep it on me. I would just constantly keep it up. Every time it stopped, every time it went away, I would cast it again. And I would constantly have, it was the lowest level shield spell. So it really was not giving me that much, especially on my characters that were more like melee combat focused. Like, I'm already spec'd into heavy armor, and I'm using a sword and a shield. It's like this low level shield spell that's giving me like 6 armor points barely means anything to me. But the point was, it was cheap and it was easy, and I could keep it up on myself constantly without having to worry about like draining myself of mana, and I would just get alteration skill just by walking around and constantly keeping the shield spell up on me. And then the same thing with illusion. You could do the same thing with illusion and like the barest detect life spell. Like, it would only detect life within like a 5-meter radius around you, which is like practically nothing. It's like you probably see it at that point, unless it's invisible. But
he's behind
still,
the wall. That's about all you're gonna figure out.
Yeah. It's like if something's on the direct opposite side of a wall from you, or if it's invisible, that's the only time it's gonna come in handy. But it was cheap, and you could keep casting it on yourself and not have to worry about running out of mana. So I would just keep casting it whenever it was down and bump up my illusion skill.
Now, one thing I don't think anybody's mentioned that they've taken away over the years was the spellcrafting system.
Oh, no, yeah.
I had so much fun with the spellcrafting
spellcrafting
system.
and the enchantment system in Morrowind was awesome. And that's one of the things that I hate, that they dumbed it down in Oblivion, and I don't even think it's even there in Skyrim.
I haven't even tried.
No, you can't create your own spells.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they way dumbed it down in Oblivion.
I know when it comes to enchantment, you can still you don't create your own stuff, but it entirely depends on how high your enchantment skill is. You break enchantments off of other items that you find.
Oh, and you can put them on,
and
too.
it learns you an enchantment, and you can. It's not a single time thing.
Yeah.
Once you break an enchantment off, it destroys that item, but you learn that enchantment.
You learn the
and
enchantment.
You can put on any item you want, provided you have the level to do so, and whatever soul gem you need.
The soul gem you need.
Some are like, whatever, petty is fine. Some will take a common. Some will take a great.
Well, yeah, that was like in all the others, it was, the level of the soul gem determined essentially how powerful an enchantment you could make on an item. Yeah. That's one thing that I'm definitely so sad from, and because I remember in Morrowind we used to do things like we'd take some like completely low level innocuous weapon, and we kind of cheated a little bit because we had Morrowind on the PC. So it came with an editor where you could edit in your own stuff. But there were some awesome ones that we actually created on our own in game. Like we created an amulet that you wore it, and it did just a shit ton of, I think it was poison damage in a huge area around you. So you would literally just walk through towns, and it's like it's like I just watched the movie Constantine. Have you guys ever seen the movie Constantine?
Yeah.
There's the one scene where the guy's walking through the field of cow and they're just like dying around him.
Yeah.
It's like that. You walk into a town and that's what it's like. It's like people just start dropping dead around you. It's like even if the guards get angry at you, they have to walk through your field of shit tons of poison damage to get to you. And by the time they get to you, they're like, even if they're like the best guards, they're like half dead. So you're like, yeah, whatever, kill.
Stab.
Yeah. It was hilarious. And like one of the things that is this is another instance of crappy game mechanic programming that they removed in Oblivion that was in Morrowind, just like the crappy unit AI in Warcraft 3. In Morrowind, whenever you sold an item to a shopkeeper, if it was a piece of equipment that you could equip, they would wear it. They would immediately put it on.
Hilarious.
Oh, I do remember that, yeah.
So we used to enchant rings, because rings were pretty cheap to enchant in Morrowind. We used to enchant rings with damage to self. Constant damage to self. So if you put it on, it would start killing you. So then we would sell it to a shopkeeper, and he would immediately equip it. And he would die. And then when he was dead, you could then take everything in his shop because it's no longer owned by him. We used to do that.
You didn't kill him.
Yeah, no, because I didn't kill him.
Great.
I may have sold him the gun and the bullet, but I didn't kill him.
There was
That's fantastic.
When I was playing through Oblivion,
that was one of my favorite things to do in Morrowind, which I was like, I was sad that they removed it from Oblivion because I was like, I can't just, I can't metagame and just kill all the shopkeepers and take all their stuff. But at the same time, I'm like, no, that was pretty stupid. So I'm kind of glad they removed it.
That was one of the times I was playing through Oblivion. Though I ran into a bug. I don't remember the name of the town this time. There was a vampire lord who ruled over all of it. And there were the vampire hunters who had come to his town, and he didn't want them to come after him. He knew they were going to the.
That's the one with the castle that's like way up on a cliff. Yeah.
And so he asked you to either help them finish their quest and get them out of there, or take them out.
Yeah.
Well, I went and talked to them, and they said they would meet me at the cave, but they never showed up.
Yeah.
So I went in and killed all the vampires, and went back.
Uh-huh.
And I told them I had done this. And they never left. And I couldn't do anything about it because they were in a tavern, and if I had attacked them in the tavern, I would have gotten in trouble with the law.
Yeah.
So I ended up having to, I just pulled up the console, gave myself some poison apples, and I pickpocketed each of them and put it in their bag. And then the next morning when they went downstairs to have breakfast, they all ate the poison apples and died.
Yeah.
And then I went back to the Lord and I was like, they're dead!
They're dead!
I'm just like, you stupid game.
Yeah.
I remember,
just trying to get NPCs to do certain things in Oblivion definitely got more difficult.
When, in Oblivion, there were two ways that you could get NPCs who would go out and kill for you. You could either max out the Dark Brotherhood storyline, or there was a piece of DLC you could buy where you got access to a vampire lair, and you eventually had like a lower level vampire minion guy who you would just send out, and he would kill somebody and come back with
Just
stuff.
anybody?
That's the thing is, it picked a random killable NPC in the game. It picked it actually went and found. It would pick from the actual NPCs in the game. It would find one that is killable, because Oblivion introduced the thing where it's like if they were story crucial NPCs, you couldn't kill them. You could just knock them unconscious.
Yeah.
Which
Skyrim's the same way.
I kind of hate, but
No, that's something that's another mechanic that me and Albert hated that they included, because like we loved in Morrowind when you killed somebody who was story crucial, it would give you the most hilarious "you f*** yourself" game message ever. It was like, you have killed somebody who is crucial to the existence of this world. You can either load a previous save or continue to play in the doomed world that you've created. And that was what the last line said. It was you could either load from last save or continue to play in the doomed world you've created, which we thought was awesome, which we thought was hilarious.
No, that's great. I kind of wish they left that in there.
Albert one time managed to actually kill Dagoth before he got to that point in the quest where you actually confront him, which was hilarious.
Okay, so you've mentioned that in the past. I didn't realize that he killed him before it was supposed to be physically possible.
He killed him before you're supposed to.
Okay.
He killed him before you're supposed to. And
Doom.
No, yeah, there was that. That's something I was always sad in Oblivion. It's I understand you're trying to keep people from screwing themselves over, but I mean, I still thought it was hilarious.
Well, aside from the hilarity, I remember there was one point in Oblivion where you meet Vivek, who's supposed to be the god of that town or whatever. He's supposed to be super powerful.
That's the Vampire Lord.
But
I'm pretty sure that's him.
He was something else, though, wasn't he? He wasn't a vampire.
No, Vivek was...
he's like a lesser deity,
Vivek was one of the lesser deities in Morrowind. He was in charge of... I think it was the town.
Yeah,
there was
same
the
town
city
shares
Vivek.
his
There was
name,
there was the city Vivek, and he was in charge of it. And yeah, he was essentially like a lesser deity. I don't think he was quite on the level of the Daedric princess, but he was essentially like a lesser deity.
And there's part in Morrowind's storyline where you have to go talk to him, and he gives you, I think, one of the items you need to kill Dagoth. But if you were stupid enough, you could attack him, and he would fight you.
Yep.
But if you managed to kill him...
It was a tough challenge.
But you could do it.
He was no pushover. But yes, you could kill Vivek, which was hilarious. This guy's supposed to help you out. You could just own...
You're talking about us in Morrowind, so I'm out on that.
No, yeah. Vivek was from Morrowind.
That name sounds really familiar, though.
They reference so much stuff, but they reference a decent amount of Morrowind in...
I was going to say, chances are...
And he's a popular character from the series, too.
Yeah.
He's a popular character from the series in general. I distinctly remember a couple of the NPCs that reference the events going on that happened in Morrowind, in Oblivion. They mention his name and the name of the town and stuff, and the name of the city and stuff like that. But yeah, the spell crafting, the spell making, and the enchanting was definitely a game mechanic that I was sad got dumbed down, because the stuff you can make in Morrowind was just so awesome. It was just, and you literally you were literally only held back by the gold that you had and the amount of soul gems that the amount of souls that you had to contribute.
Right.
It's that's all you were held back by. It's you're whatever else you could imagine, go at it. Go at it. But speaking of Morrowind, that makes me think of a game mechanic that I see a lot, and it always aggravates me that it isn't more realistic than what it is. And it relates to jumping and navigating the world. First off, so Do you guys like or dislike when games just like include a jump mechanic, but it's like, not really a crucial part of the game? Like, for instance, Morrowind or Oblivion or Skyrim, where it's like, yeah, you can jump, but like, really, what does it get you? It barely gets you anything. Like, there might be one or two places where you might need to like jump on a crate to get up to some areas, but
no, see,
your jump is very, especially by like, if you go by standards of like platformers or games that focus on jump, it's like your jump is crap. And it's really not important.
Yeah, no, Morrowind and games like that are a good example. Platforming, that's a mechanic. You're right. You got to be able to jump, like especially something like Mega Man. You got to know how to jump and where you're jumping and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Oblivion and Morrowind, you could probably navigate the entire game without jumping once if you really, really wanted to.
Yeah, no, you could, especially in the main quests. You could definitely get through the main quests in those games without a single jump.
However, I would not have played that game for more than 20 minutes if that jump button wasn't there.
I was going to ask, like, would you guys have not played the game if you could not free jump?
It breaks the world for me. It makes it feel very limited, and it just is aggravating.
Yeah, that's always one of the things that I've always kind of been, like, I've always wanted included in the Zelda games, ever since they made the switch to 3D, was free jumping. And they have yet to include that.
I've never thought about that. You may have just ruined all Zelda games for me.
Well, you can go. There are interviews with Miyamoto. I remember seeing a couple of interviews with the current director of Zelda that took over Ocarina of Time. I don't remember. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. It's God, I can't remember it off the top of my head. That's gonna kill me. The Nintendo fan in me is crying right now that I don't remember that guy's name. But in those games, he talks. I remember they had a couple of. So I read an interview when Twilight Princess was coming out, the first game on the Wii, and it came out on the GameCube also.
When it was still GameCube development. Or
no, this was after it had officially been announced for the Wii. So it had actually been it was known that it was a Wii game at this point. Eiji Noma.
Okay.
That's what his name. It's like his last name is always hard for me to say. Is that A-O, and it's like it's one of those things where it's like, how do I pronounce that?
Yeah.
He talked about how that, that's a decision that they made. Like, they didn't want to have the dedicated jump button. They wanted it to just be like when you, and it does work fairly well. They talked about how they spent a lot of time programming the automatic jump that happens when you approach ledges. And it does work pretty well. I mean,
to be fair, I've never noticed the lack of a jump button in the Zelda games.
For the lack of a dedicated jump button, the jumping mechanics work really well. But that's one thing I always. There are just always those. I'll be playing a Zelda game and I'll just be somewhere, and that's one of the things that'll just pop into my head randomly. Is I'll just be like, man, I wish I could just like jump freeformly, just willy-nilly, just skip around, hop and jump through the wilderness and the flower fields. But you can't, and that's one of those things where I've always thought that that's a game mechanic from Zelda that with the Nintendo's philosophy is always, make it as simple as possible where it can be fun, and then extrapolate from there if you need to. So I understand their inclusion of not making a freeform jump in Zelda because that's how they build the games. But my hope is that with the newer Zelda games, that's the next big thing I'm hoping that when the next Zelda gets announced, that's the big thing with it. Is like, you can freeform jump. I'd be like,
finally.
I don't care how small of an edition this is.
Edition.
It will make me so happy.
After 25 years, we've given you a jump button.
After 30 years of Zelda.
Let me put another game in your mind for you. I don't know if I don't think you've played it much at all. Maybe you Gears of War. You can't jump.
I've played the first one.
The function of A
a little of the
is
second.
to run.
Yep, you can't jump in that game.
That is what A does for you.
Yep.
The only jump that you come close to having is climbing over things.
Vaulting over.
Yeah, vaulting over.
Exactly.
Vaulting over.
So, I mean, there's another game where every so often I'm like, why can't I jump? But, I mean, it's not really... The most you can do is dash to the side and roll, too, but...
Now, I mean, it's different in a shooter. For shooters, it's definitely very different for me. Like, when I play like, Vegas 2, or Bad Company 2, or Gears of War, I'm never like, I wish I could jump. I mean, most of the time I'm like, yeah, whatever. Mainly because the way the games are designed are
Vegas
designed in a way
tactical,
to make you forget the fact that you want to jump.
Yeah. Vegas is more tactical, so it's more of a, if you're trying to jump, you're playing this wrong.
Yeah, that too. That definitely is my more
punishes
my more
stuff like
my
that.
more enjoy of the shooters that I enjoy more are the ones that are closer in the vein of like Vegas 2 and Ghost Recon, where it's like first of all, I pretty much don't play shooters anymore that don't have cover systems. Like, I just don't. I don't. The last shooter I've really played and enjoyed that didn't have one was Bad Company 2. That was the last shooter, which was like strictly a shooter that I was like, I played it and I really, really enjoyed it, and it didn't have a cover system. I wished ever since I started the game that it did, but it didn't, and I was okay with it. Every other shooter though, especially since Rainbow Six Vegas, because the cover system in Vegas and Vegas 2 is just, I love the crap out of it. The toggle cover system where you have to hold the trigger down to stay in cover, and it's like if you want to get out of cover, you just release the L button and you are out. Yep. You are done. No finicking with like pulling away from the cover and pressing the A button or doing any of this. It's like just literally let go of the L button, you're out of cover. Press the L button, you'll take cover against whatever you're next to. It's like, I love that cover mechanic, and it worked so well.
That did a similar
Do you
thing.
play
Deus Ex has a really...
That's what it was,
Deus Ex. It's pretty much an extrapolate. Deus Ex and Future Soldier, Ghost Recon Future Soldier,
I have not played
basically have an extrapolated version of that. They have the hold trigger cover system. I think you can change it to a toggle in those where you just press it and it does the same thing, but you can have it function as a whole. Because that's how I play. And press A and you'll. But yeah, they have the things like the movement, the movement between cover systems.
That's what I was going to ask.
Splinter Cell Double Agent had too.
Yes, Double Agent had a really good Conviction. That's the one. That one had a cover system just like that too.
I played the new Deus Ex game. Yeah, and I really enjoyed that, but playing in first person, when you go to cover, it pulls you out to third.
Yeah.
Is that how it worked in Vegas?
That's how it worked in Vegas and Vegas 2
that's kind
and
of
Future Soldier.
Hard to do if you remain in the first person perspective. But I kind of wish they would find a way to do it, because it pulls me out.
Me personally, I'm always more of a fan of third person shooters more than first person, mainly because I mean the main reason why I like them better is because of how much vision you have, because I always find that first person shooter is like, it's cool and kind of immersive, but at the same time it's not immersive for me, because I feel like I have this box over my eyes where it's like I can't see things too far to my left or right, where it's like in reality I'd be able to see that far. Like, your peripheral vision in real life is a much wider field of view than what's normally given in most first person shooters these days. Now, games have like the FOV slider where you can simulate peripheral view by basically what is just stretches your view out, and it simulates peripheral vision. Problem is that makes the game look weird to me, because it's simulating my peripheral vision in a space that is limited to inside of my peripheral vision. So it's like, it's that weird kind of view, and it actually makes some people motion sick. Like, some people get motion sickness when they play.
And then there are some people like what is his name? Sorry.
I don't know, what is his name?
E for all, the booth that we kept hassling.
Fatality. Fatality. I was actually just thinking about that guy the other day.
Yeah, his field of view, at least when we were watching them play, he had it way up.
Yeah,
it wasn't.
Well, it's like
it wasn't necessarily 360, but it pretty much could have been.
I remember in the old school PC first-person shooters, mainly it got popular with Quake. Quake had an insanely high ability to adjust the field of view. Yeah. Well, we were watching him play Unreal Tournament. Was what we were watching.
No, he was playing Quake.
Was he playing? I remember most of the time. I remember at least most of the time I was there. He was playing.
Because remember,
Unreal
one of the other booths was giving away copies of the new Quake.
I don't remember that.
I
do not remember that.
Remember Rhett got like 3?
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. I remember he did get.
And he kept all of them.
But yeah, like Quake that's one of the things Quake is super famous for, is like the field of view it could give you was huge, but it's the same thing with me where it's like that game always looked weird to me because of that fact. Like they're trying to simulate peripheral vision. That's why I'm usually more of a fan of third-person shooters, because then the peripheral vision isn't simulated. It's more of it's an attempt to actually create real peripheral vision. Now, like, the peripheral vision over here is maybe a little more high fidelity than it is in real life and more noticeable than, it is for my real
see that
peripheral
clear
vision.
motion over there? Why, yes,
but the problem with that is that's just a problem of that's where technology is at,
Yeah.
Unless you're going to get an Oculus Rift, you can't really actually simulate like legitimate peripheral vision. Or there was that.
You can have some blur filters going on.
Yeah. But yeah, it's like I usually enjoy third-person shooters, and third-person definitely, if it's a third-person shooter and doesn't have a cover mechanic, I don't even give it the time of day. I don't even acknowledge its existence.
That for first-person shooters, then you're not going to have that much fun with BioShock, there, buddy.
No, that's because I've watched like reviews and a few videos on it. And that's one of the things that every shooter, it happens to me with every shooter, and I'm just to the point now where I just kind of accept it. And the shooter basically, I've never been like a huge shooter person ever, for the rest of my life anyways. So it's not like I'm, having to turn down all these shooter games that I would have enjoyed otherwise if I could only get over this cover mechanic thing. It's like, no, I don't really get a lot of shooters anyways. Like I don't play the Call of Duty series. I liked Bad Company and Bad Company 2 and Battlefield, but I didn't like Bad Company 3 or Battlefield 3, so I'm probably not going to get Battlefield 4. So it's like, there's a lot of shooters that I don't really get. Like I've enjoyed some parts of the Halo series, but there's kind of been a love-hate relationship with me and Halo. I love the first one. From there, it kind of gets sketchy.
Halo
so
2,
it's like
definitely sketchy. Halo 3 got a lot better. Halo 4 was fun.
I haven't played that one yet.
In
I haven't actually played
regards
that
to game
yet.
mechanics there, though, the one thing that you definitely see missing is you went from... So, Halo 1, you had
the health and shield.
Gun. Yeah, you had your one gun, you had your health, and your shield.
2 guns. You had 2 guns.
Okay, sorry, but you only were holding one gun.
Yeah.
Halo 2...
The dual-wielding
but they took away health.
Yep.
Did they?
Yeah, They took away... Well, it's like you could only take, like... After your shields were dead, you essentially had, like... From like a low-level weapon, you had maybe 2 shots. Like 2 non-charged shots of a plasma pistol, if you had no shields, could kill you. Yeah. And it's like if it was anything else that had any sort of like 1 shot from any sort of like assault rifle or better, killed you if you had no shields. Wasn't the case in the original Halo.
Yeah.
It's like the health was still
you have
there.
Health bar in the original Halo?
Yeah, you had the health bar in the original Halo, and they had the health packs, which would recharge your health bar. Yeah. And yeah, in Halo 2, from Halo 2 onwards, it was basically
one of
you
them
had
added
your health.
back
That's it.
in, and I want to say...
was it ODST?
ODST.
Yeah, I want to say ODST had it.
Yeah, that would make sense since you're not a...
But that made more sense with ODST also because...
You weren't a Spartan.
Well, and... more of the segments of that game where there were a lot of segments in that game where you were more kind of wandering around New Mombasa instead of like in a specific level. Like I remember that was one of the nice things about that game was you essentially between the like levels of the game, your paths through New Mombasa were a little more freeform than some other shooters. Yeah. So with the more free-form nature of that game, it made sense for you to be able to to have to have a threat between firefights, like, you know, that, oh, this last firefight, you know, really strung my health down. I may need to, like, go off and find a health pack instead of just, like, barreling through more. Yeah, I want to say it was ODST that had it. But yeah, after Halo 1, it was basically the health, your health after your shields were gone was mostly nothing.
Yeah, it just flashes red.
Yeah.
I guess it's been too long since I played the original Halo.
Reach also had health.
Did Reach have health?
It did have health.
I didn't remember.
Your health actually could recharge in that one, but only so much.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
There were basically sections of it, and you would lose sections of it, and then it would recharge up the most recent section of it.
That's right. Yeah, it was in like chunks. It was in like 3 chunks, and it's like if you lost a whole chunk, you couldn't recover that chunk.
Correct.
That's right.
But so in
talking about the game mechanics with dual wielding in Halo Reach, they took it away. In Halo Reach, they took out dual wielding.
It's been a while since I played Reach.
Yeah, Reach had no dual wielding.
Did it?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yep. Wow. I am absolutely sure.
But yeah, no, I was gonna say definitely in Halo 4. I mean, it was just gone.
Is dual wielding gone?
Yeah, no, there's no dual wielding in Halo 4.
Huh. So they kept it gone from Halo Reach.
Yeah,
Halo Reach did not have it.
It has been a while.
I can guarantee you.
I didn't play anything past 3. So.
Well, let me tell you what. If you enjoyed the first Halo, I think you'd enjoy Halo 4.
I'd say
you'd probably enjoy Halo Reach.
I'd say the closest things I had to coming to enjoying Halo on the same way I did Halo 1 was Halo Reach. I'd say that was the closest one to capture.
Well, you and I used to play it online.
Yeah. We used to play it online on the 360 at the York house occasionally. Like that was the one game in the Halo series that I played that I could say I enjoyed as much as I did the first Halo.
Yeah. You're right about that. No dual wielding in Halo Reach.
Yeah.
So yeah, how about that?
But on the topic of jumping, which I started and then we got sidetracked, but that's okay. The one mechanic I was just watching a review online of a game that just came out called game Defiance. You guys heard about that game?
The sci-fi one?
It's like the MMO. It's the MMO that's going alongside a new TV series that's supposed to be starting on the Sci-Fi Channel. They're going to be they're in the same universe, and I guess apparently like the events of the show are going to affect what happens in the MMO, and I think vice versa, but I'm not sure how they're going to do that.
Stuff happened back. We'll see.
But I was watching a review of that game, and it actually looks fairly interesting. It looks like a lot of fun. It's a third-person shooter that doesn't have a cover mechanic, though, so that made me sad. But one of the things I was watching the guy play through it, and he got to this area. He was going around on foot, and it does have freeform jumping, and it looks like it's about as useful as jumping in Morrowind and Oblivion was. Like, not really there to, like, get you to anywhere special. Mostly there to get you over, like, maybe low hills or rocks or things like that. And he came to this hill. It was about as tall as he was. That's about how tall the hill was. And the side of the hill wasn't like a sheer cliff face. It wasn't like straight up and down. But it was fairly steep. And especially, you remember in like Morrowind, did you ever try to do the jumping up the really steep cliffs?
Oh, yeah.
You used to be able to catch random polygons, and that was how we used to make us. You could make it up a really tall mountain if you just spammed the jump button, because you would randomly catch it.
They kind of took that away.
Yeah. Well, I definitely noticed it was slightly
You can do it with a horse better than you can do it on foot.
Yes, I have.
I have seen some outstanding screenshots of the horses from Skyrim in some physically defying positions.
Like, how did you even get over there?
How did you even?
No,
like, I think one of the things I've seen is
so far was I was wandering in one of the mammoth plains, and I look off in the distance and I see 2 mammoths. Then I realize they're not on the ground; they're hovering in the sky, and then they fall and die. And there's a giant nearby me who then gets pissed off.
Who then gets angry at you?
So he starts chasing after me.
He's got PTSD, and he just goes all aggro on you.
There's a guy.
There's this giant. There's this giant, and he was all aggro.
Yeah, no, these mammoths are just like in the sky. They fall. The giant near me gets really pissed off and starts chasing me. And I'm like, I wasn't even close.
Yeah, but with the games that have like that more, games like Morrowind, Oblivion, the games that have that like kind of, free range, open world, wilderness that you can explore, I've always noticed the same thing where it's like you get past a certain degree of slope and you just can't walk up it. And your best hope is for you to just jump and catch a random polygon.
Jump it.
Which, I mean, with my experience in playing games like that, you get to the point where you're like, oh, you kind of figure out, I know where I can catch the polygons on the correct angles to where I can actually jump up this cliff. I've always looked at some of those, like there's the cliff that he was going up, that he was trying to get over. I looked at it and I went, if they would incorporate some sort of game mechanic where you could scramble up sloped landscape, a normal person could scramble up that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one thing in those types of games that I've always been like, why is this not a thing yet? Why is this not a thing? It doesn't seem like it would be that much work. Obviously make it if you're scrambling, you can't attack, of course, because scrambling generally involves you using your arms to assist your movement up a slope. So it's clearly you would not be able to sword fight with a guy while you're scrambling up a slope. Clearly that'd be, unless you're like Chuck Norris or some shit. Unless you're super badass. Unless you're super badass, you're not going to be scrambling up a slope in the middle of a sword fight while you're casting spells off in another direction or something.
Scramble with your feet.
Yeah. But, there are times when I look at slopes and I'm like, I personally, as a not very athletic, 130 pounds soaking wet with a brick in my pocket, 5'9" person, regular person, I could get up inclines like that on my own and not even fairly wind myself doing it. It wouldn't even be an exhausting endeavor for me to do that. And yet here, this, awesome paragon of athleticism I have created in Oblivion, who can sword fight 4 guys at a time and come out of it with nothing but scars and a good story to tell. He cannot scramble up this little tiny ass hill that's just a little too steep for him.
That's I think what kills stuff that doesn't have a jump button for me is that
if I'm in that Oblivion first person, does.
But if I'm in that first person perspective and they don't give it to me, I'm like, I could jump over 2 stairs.
Yeah.
You've put me in the first person perspective. Well, I'm supposed to be the character. This is unbelievable.
And I mean, it's it's one of those things where you have games like the Assassin's Creed series where it's if it's a building and it's straight up and down, Altair is a ninja. But if it's a cliff, he's basically lost.
Well, and of course, in the first game, you can do all kinds of things. But you if you try and swim.
Yeah, but screw you if you want to swim. Assassins don't swim. That is beneath us. If you are caught swimming, you must immediately perform hirikiri and kill yourself. Yeah, it's that's one of those things. So in Oblivion, it's I can't get over the fact that there are some of those small hills where it's I have to jump to get over this. This seems it just pulls me out. It's one of those things you were talking about. It's it pulls me out of the experience where it's oh, now I have to ninja jump my way up this cliff because it's just barely too steep. And then it gets to points where you're I'm ninja jumping my way up cliffs where it's I have no reason being here. But because of the way the game mechanics are, I can jump my way up this cliff and, whatever. Yeah, it's cool. I can totally stand on the side of an 89-degree incline because I caught the polygon at the right angle.
Yeah, exactly.
It's it's that sort of thing where it's more and more games like that. I wish there were games that would incorporate more realistic climbing mechanics for terrain, not just buildings and objects that are man-made, being able to climb the actual earth.
Yeah.
Climb up a cliff wall in some way, shape, or form. A cliff face. Or, just be able to scramble up a low hill without having to worry about having to go, 10 feet off to the side to find a slightly less sloped path up the hill. It's I just wish more games had that. That's a game mechanic that is severely lacking. That's one of those game mechanics where it's like, I just wish that this was present in any game.
Yeah, anything that they add to make the world more explorable in one of those sandbox type games immediately earns it points for me, even if I'm not already willing to play the game. Yeah. No, like if the game sounded awful and it just sounded like really painful, but they made navigating the world
really fun,
super fun, I might have to play it for a while.
I mean, I know your stance on this. Spider-Man 2. That game was not amazing by any stretch of the imagination 2. As an action game. Or even an open world game.
But it was so fun to
But web swinging was so fun.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, I will today, if I still had a copy, I would play that and just swing around.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody just needs to make that a game for us now. Just web swinger.
Just web swinger.
Indie game on Xbox.
And no Spider-Man since has been able to capture it right. Like, no Spider-Man since has seemed to be able to capture it.
That game came out, and I played it, because I think I bought the first Spider-Man movie tie-in game, and I was like,
I never had the first one.
This was alright. I've had
space.
I've had Spider-Man games forever, because he's always been my favorite Marvel character.
Yeah, I remember playing the one on, like, the N64. There was the one for the
really
the
hard
Super
2D
Nintendo
one that I never friggin' got
the
past.
really hard 2D one on the Super Nintendo.
Are you talking about the Spider-Man Venom one?
Yeah.
No, there were a couple that were like beat 'em ups, but then there was one that was like
Venom was a beat 'em up.
Right. That's not what I'm talking about though. There was one that was an old one where you played Spider-Man and like the enemies were like goons. Like the first level was a warehouse.
Yeah.
And you go to the warehouse and you're supposed to like get to the top, and I think there's a supervillain waiting for you at the top as a boss battle. But there were stuff like you could take pictures for the Daily Bugle, and like when your health got low, you could go back to Peter's apartment and you just like pace back and forth while his health recharges, and then you could go back to the level.
Yeah.
But you had to restart at the beginning.
That's kind of ridiculous and awesome.
No, it was
awesome
awful,
and
I hardly ever made it out of that warehouse because it was so difficult. But when Spider-Man 2 came out and I started moving around the city, it just felt so correct.
Well,
and then they've never done it since. I don't understand. They've already found the perfect solution.
It's like, I remember...
And you can't just duplicate that shit. Somebody did the work for you.
Yeah. I remember the first game that came out after Spider-Man 2 that I played was they did one based on the Ultimate Spider-Man universe.
That was fun. The web swimming didn't feel
that one
as
was
good.
Fun, except for the fact that I think I rented it from GameFly, and I was playing it, and I was like, okay, this looks like it has some good potential, and I got to a point where I could, I started web swinging around the city, and I was like, no, and I stopped, and I sent it back the next day. I played it for like an hour.
Were you shooting into space again?
Dude, I love shooting into space. It's fantastic.
But that was one of the great things about Spider-Man 2, though, was the realistic part of you have to have something to latch onto.
But they did it, like, I don't know what it is. It's just they did it so much better.
It was fun.
Than any Spider-Man game since. I don't know what it was. I can't...
It's physics-based. It's all...
I can't legitimately explain, like, what exactly the other games have done so wrong. Because, like, it seems like they're still, like, trying to base themselves on some sort of physics. But for some reason, it's just not as good.
Well, I didn't play the Spider-Man 3 movie tie-in game.
I don't know if I ever played that one. No, I didn't, because I never watched the movie, and I disavowed all knowledge of that movie ever existing. I never watched it, and I decreed that I would never play the game as
Peter
well.
walking down the street, never saw that shit?
Nope, never saw it. Never will.
I think the next game I sat down and played all the way through after Spider-Man 2 was Web of Shadows.
Web of Shadows.
Which was good. It had some severe bug issues.
Yeah.
The web swinging felt decent, but it was not Spider-Man 2.
It was not as good. Just was not as good, yeah.
I can tell you for a fact what was wrong with the most recent movie tie-in game, Amazing Spider-Man, aside from I didn't like that film at all. The web swinging, I showed somebody else that game I purchased brand new because I had heard the people who took over, I think it's Beanox. I had heard they did some good stuff with Shattered Dimensions and...
Which I played almost all of. I almost beat Shattered Dimension. I played a lot of Shattered Dimensions. And that game was a lot of fun, but it wasn't an open world game. It was a level based game.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of a different feel, and most of the levels there was no like web swinging around. Like you definitely had levels where you would like web zip to get to new places and things like that, but the like free form web swinging around this gigantic city, like that didn't exist in either of the previous Beanox titles. Both of those titles, Shattered Dimensions and Edge of Time, were both level based games instead of more open sandbox style.
Okay. Well, I'd heard they had done better than whoever did Spider-Man 3's movie tie-in game. I'd heard the Beanox ones were good, so I bought the new movie tie-in.
Who did them?
I think it might have still been Activision, but
Activision was still Activision was still is still the publisher on the games.
Yeah,
they've been the publisher, for a while.
I know Treyarch did too.
I don't remember who
did.
Yeah, I don't remember who actually was the developer on 3.
But
Web of Shadows.
I picked up the new tie-in game, Amazing Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And the first couple of levels are like inside, like you were talking about. They're more level-based environments.
Yeah.
So the combat felt okay. It actually felt kind of more like Spider-Man should than Spider-Man 2, because he essentially played like a brawler character in that game.
Pretty much.
But then when they let me go outside, I was immediately horrified. And I immediately pulled the disc out of my... I turned the game off.
Wow.
I turned the game off and walked away for an hour because I was mad. I put it back in, and I tried it again, and I put it back in the box and drove it to the store. It's so bad, and I showed somebody that was at my house while I was playing it. I think in Spider-Man 2 you had one button for each hand to trigger the webs.
I don't remember. I think it was...
Because I remember you had to hold them both down to do the thing where you hold both and then you could launch yourself.
I'm trying to remember it, because I remember there was one button that you definitely had to hold it to do the web swing, and then you would let go, and then you would press it again.
I thought it was just that you pointed in a particular direction.
It's been so effing long. No, there was one like that.
You did have to do a dual button thing, but I think during Spider-Man 2's navigation, when you were swinging, you would point the stick in a direction you wanted to go, and you would fire.
Okay, they didn't have one for each hand then.
No, it wasn't like
certain.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, again, it has been quite a while since I have actually played the game. But if I remember correctly, it was, or at least I played the GameCube version, so one of the other versions could have been slightly different. But I don't imagine it would have been drastically different. I remember there was you held on the GameCube version, you held the right trigger, and that would as long as you would shoot a web out when you first pressed it, and then you held it to essentially keep the swing going, and then you would let go and then press it again, and you would shoot out another web.
Okay. With the most recent tie-in game for Amazing Spider-Man, there is one web button, and essentially it works like a sky run button. You hold it down and press
it just
forward.
It just swings automatically.
It just keeps going.
Oh, that sucks.
And I showed the person that was at my house while I was playing. I literally held it down, went straight into a building. He autopiloted up the side of the building, over the top of the roof, and kept going. And the other thing you could do is like a web zip.
Yeah.
Well, I found out you could web zip if you pointed the camera straight into the sky. You could web zip straight into the air. And there was nothing there.
You grabbed onto the moon.
Yeah, I eventually just started swinging over the tops of skyscrapers because the web button isn't attaching to anything.
That was the joke
of being so poorly coded.
That was the joke. Well, that was the joke me and my brother always used to make when we were little kids. Like when we first started getting into comic books, and the old Spider-Man cartoon was running in the mid '90s, and that was the joke we always made is he web slings to the moon, because there's a bunch of shots where it's down a city street and he's web slinging, and you're like, what's he web slinging to there? And that was the joke, was he's web slinging to the moon. That's hilarious, because that's literally what you can do in that game, pretty much.
I have a theory here about what it was that you liked so much about Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2's navigation, and what I would also equate to Arkham City's navigation. Have either of you played Arkham
Yeah, I
City?
haven't played Arkham City.
Okay,
I've
I
played
played both.
Arkham Asylum, but I haven't played Arkham
There was
City.
a bit of a challenge to do it.
No,
I
well,
would
yeah,
say
'cause-
that's what it is.
Yeah, you kind of had to learn the feel of it.
You had to learn the feel of it.
Yeah.
And once you had it, it was one of those things where it was like, look at me navigating around this
Well, yeah,
city,
'cause-
doing awesome shit. Because in Arkham
They
City,
put tricks in that one too, didn't
yeah,
they?
they had like zip lines and stuff. Like you had your grapple hook.
Yeah.
And so you could pull yourself in, you could reel yourself in to keep moving around without having to ever land. And that was one of the other things that was an awesome thing in Arkham City was, if you could keep going without landing, that was awesome.
Well,
And it was just,
yeah.
it's a challenge.
was
And
like
it
in
was in Spider-Man 2, because you still had the challenge of, to keep up your velocity, you had to be able to latch onto buildings. If you got too low,
and
you
you had to
street.
know when
had to
in
know,
your
yeah,
arc to
what
let
point
go.
of
You
the
like
season.
if you waited too long, then you're like at the peak of the arc, and then when you let go, you're basically not going to go anywhere. And your next swing, you're going to be at a lower momentum.
Exactly.
If you let go too early, you're just going to like fly straight forward, and then in the next web swing, you're going to slam into the ground mid swing because you always swing in a pendulum fashion. So it's
Exactly.
like wherever you start, you have to incorporate yourself enough pendulum momentum so that way you don't just go smacking into the ground, which was something that me and my brother used to do. Is we would go to the tallest building in the game and we would jump off and we would try and web swing at the last moment to where our swing would make it so we wouldn't touch the ground. And there were tons of times when we would essentially just pendulum straight into the pavement. we would web sling onto something, and yeah, it would just be like, boom, and we just face plant onto the pavement. But there were those times where we would catch it just right, and it's like, if somebody had stood a piece of paper straight up, we could have wiped our ass with it. But and how close we came to brushing the pavement, we would just come so close, and it was just like, it felt so sweet, like it felt awesome.
Well, and I remember Spider-Man 2 kept the stats of the farthest you would jump without
the farthest you could fall without dying.
shooting. Yeah.
Yeah, like the farthest amount of distance you dropped without dying.
Without touching the ground.
So there was no achievements there, so it was always a personal achievement, you know.
No, yeah, because this was before achievements were in everything and anything. So it was always just a stat. It was just a stat in a stat page that you could find and you could brag about, like, hey, look at that number. I jumped from the highest building and came down and didn't die. Yeah, no, that was, and that's the thing is, like, yeah, like that's what you're like in Crackdown 2 with the wingsuit. That was one of the fun things about the wingsuit.
That was awesome.
It was skill to move, and yeah, there was the achievement for how far you could fly without touching the ground, because you had to get the feel of the curve you had to follow,
at it at first.
of the sine curve that you. Oh yeah, God! When we first got those, I remember we were like, what the hell is this? And then we had to call upon our Super Mario World skills with the cape from Super Mario World, because the cape from Super Mario World functioned in a similar type of fashion,
And
where
the funny thing is
you
about
didn't really like fly. You could glide, and then you could, do this. You could do the swoops.
arc,
You could do the
yeah.
parabolic swoops.
The only problem in Crackdown 2 was they had some little bug in there, because you could gain height.
No, that was. I don't think that was a bug. I think that was it, because
That was on purpose?
it had,
Yeah.
because it was pretty. You had to be pretty precise to actually gain height.
Oh, you did. but
You had
could
to be
still
pretty
gain
spot
height.
on. I think that was intentionally thrown in there for them. Like, if you were good enough at this, you could gain height with it.
Oh,
I
okay,
think
fine.
I think that's on purpose.
Okay.
Because how long did it take us before we were actually able to gain height in the wingsuit? It took
long
us
time.
hours of practicing.
Yeah.
Like, I had a hard enough time just maintaining, like,
Altitude?
maintaining a slight decline. I had such a hard time maintaining that when it first started. And then it got to the point where I was like, no, okay, now I can
that I
maintain a pretty
recall-
steady altitude.
Because I remember it changes colors on your tail.
It would change colors, yeah.
And so, really the only way to gain height, you had to be pretty much exactly when it started changing color, you would swoop up and change and change and change.
No, yeah, like,
And over time, you would start gaining height out.
it was a
See,
precision
I never noticed
thing.
the color changing.
There's because the trails that lead, it's like from your hands and feet. There's a trail that leads off, and that actually changes color, and it depends on how, like, essentially how steep you are. And it's if you pulled up at the right moment, that was it. You would go down, it would start to change color, and as it reached red, like if you pulled up right as it reached red,
Yep.
that would be the opportune time, and you could actually gain height.
And as
that
you were
way.
pulling up, it would start to turn blue when
Yeah.
you were going to start falling again, and you were losing speed.
And it was
That
basically
once
you
hit
had
blue,
to-
you wanted to dip down.
you had to alternate
Otherwise, you would
between
just
those
kind of
two.
fall.
Yeah, no, and yeah, that's the same sort of thing as within Spider-Man 2. It's like, there was a skill to it. There was a skill and a challenge to it where, yeah, like I had not played The Amazing Spider-Man, but from what it sounds like, that's terrible, because that removes all the fun and challenge out of it. That just takes everything away.
I understand they're trying to appeal to, maybe somebody that doesn't know how that functions, but at the same time, Spider-Man 2 is so awesome in its navigation because it was maybe difficult to pick up, but once you mastered it, there was some stuff you could pull off.
It's like, it was
amazing.
It wasn't hard to get the concept.
No,
like the concept was fairly easy. But if you really wanted to have a lot of fun with it, if you really wanted to get like really fast, that's when you had to be like good.
Yeah, to get to the point where you could like swing, maintain your speed, run across the side of a building, bounce off, hit another building, go up over it, and then swing. And not lose velocity.
And not lose any momentum.
That was awesome.
That was sweet. But that was that took some skill. Like that took
I played that game
and having
for
some
hundreds
skill.
of hours probably.
And yeah,
hundreds of hours? Damn.
No, I played that. I
would put that game in and just swing around the city and not do anything. I would spend half an hour just moving.
See, I rented it, so I didn't have that option.
I think the longest amount of time I spent doing that was I put it in one day and I just did nothing but web swinging for an hour and a half. Yeah. Nothing but web swinging. That's all I did.
Fun.
I didn't like try any. It's like I didn't go to like any, because there were like the races you could do where you had to follow a certain path.
No.
I wasn't doing the races. I wasn't trying to collect any challenges. I wasn't trying to do anything. All I was doing was just web swinging around the environment. Yep. And I loved it, and it was amazing.
Yeah, I found all the collectibles in that game just by the virtue of...
me too.
I spent so much time swinging all over the city that I had to eventually...
You left no nook and cranny unexplored.
And that was a funny little Easter egg. Did you get... There were, I think, hint balloons, and they were all voiced by Bruce Campbell, because the game was tied into the Sam Raimi movies. Yes. And he would tell you something, and I think at the very first one, he says, if you collect them all, I'll say something different. So when you collect all 215, I think it was...
It was a lot.
Every voice dialogue that you trigger now just says something different.
Something different, yeah. It was an awesome Easter egg. It was so amazing. It was an awesome Easter egg.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
And it's like, and that's one of the, and I think that's one of the things that I wish more games had, because I think that's one of my favorite things to do in video games is just explore and navigate an environment. Like when I get into Minecraft, that's what I do. I don't give a crap about building myself complex houses, like big houses with like complex redstones. Like I just want to go out and explore.
See what the game
Unfortunately, with Minecraft, it's
get lost.
And the thing is like all you basically have to do is run around and jump, and it gets a little boring after a while. That's one of the things I wish about, because Terraria has awesome mechanics for exploring a world, but the problem is Terraria worlds are always finite in size. That's what I wish about Terraria was more like Minecraft. Is I wish its worlds were more, where you were able to generate larger worlds, so then you could navigate these these worlds with all of the mechanics that Terraria has available. Because you have things like double jumping and grappling hooks and wings and shit like that in Terraria, where it's like that makes navigating the environment a lot more fun than it is in Minecraft. But that's still, when I get into Minecraft, like I will build myself like. I'll dig myself just like a shit shack hole that I can survive like a couple nights in, and then I'll build myself a relatively simplistic house, and that's what I'll do. And then after that, it's just like I just go out and explore shit. Like I just pick a direction and just start traveling. It's like just go as far as I feel like I can go before I'm just utterly lost and it's, too hard of a trek to find my way back home. It's like, and that's what it is. Like in Spider-Man 2, I love just going around everywhere. In Oblivion, I explored every effing inch of that map in Oblivion. Like, I went everywhere. Because it's like, that's what I love to do. And that's one thing that looked pretty nice about Defiance is Defiance looked like it had a pretty fun, it looked like it was a pretty fun world to explore. Which, that's always, I haven't felt that way in an MMO type game since City of Heroes. That's one of the things I loved about City of Heroes, is sometimes I just love just like, getting on my character with super jump and just jumping around the zones and just exploring the zones for a little bit.
What's over here?
Yeah. It's like, hey, what's over here? It's like, I haven't been to this side of this city zone. What's over here? Oh, okay. And
Oh,
then I
but
would
that
move
kills
on.
you. Oh.
Yeah. And then I'd move on and get back to whatever I was doing. But occasionally I would just jump around. And it's like, that's one of the things, like I hardly ever fast travel in Oblivion because I liked exploring. Like I legitimately liked, it wasn't just that, yes, okay, athletics is a skill and you can level it up by just running around. So it's like part of it was gaming, gaming the game so I could get some athletic skill. But most of it was, I just loved walking from place to place or hopping on my horse sometimes, except for the horse mechanics were kind of janky, so I didn't use the horse that often.
They've gotten pretty good now.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I've heard about Skyrim is the horse mechanics are a lot better.
It's still wonky sometimes, but
they updated.
But and one of the reasons why I didn't really do it on the horse, didn't go around on the horse, is because me and Albert found out the horse has a set speed, and if you max your speed out. If you max out your speed stat, you are faster than your horse. You actually run faster if you sheath your weapons and max your speed stat, because you ran faster with your weapons sheathed than you did with your weapons unsheathed. If your weapon was sheathed, you could move faster than your horse. So it's like, well, now I have no reason to ride you at all.
There's absolutely no
now
reason.
you're just useless to me.
horse.
Like I remember Albert ran down a deer. That was one of the hilarious, one of the things we were always sad was never a legitimate achievement in that game. He ran down a deer when he was max speed. I think he even had boots that gave him like a little bit of a boost. So I think he was at like 110 or something. But yeah, he ran down a deer and clubbed it. That was one of the things that we always thought was awesome. It's like, you could actually get fast enough to chase down a deer.
Oh, that's pretty awesome.
That's good.
But yeah, it's like that's a mechanic that I love doing in games. It's just exploring environments. I'm always a big fan of games that get that really good, like get it well done. Like, and even like Oblivion. Like Oblivion doesn't have like web slinging, but it still was fun. Like
that would be kind of weird if it had web slinging.
That would be kind of weird.
You wouldn't be able to get very far. You'd be like, "Yay, Imperial City!" Now I'm gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
You might be able to get some of the trees.
Yeah, you can get some tall trees. They got a redwood forest in Oblivion. You can swing around there.
That was in Spider-Man 2. Go ahead and go to
Central Park.
Yeah, exactly. Go to Grand Central Park. Try and get around.
I remember that was the most bitch of a race in Spider-Man 2. There was a race that goes through Central Park. That was always the bitch race. Like that was the hardest race in the game.
The only thing I would do in there is I would hit the ground and I'd throw both of them out.
You could do the slingshot. Yeah, I did that a bunch too. That's how I got through that.
Pretty much the way to get through it.
They made it not as painful in Web of Shadows, but
well, did Web of Shadows have web zipping, or was Beanox the first really to introduce that?
I have not played Web of Shadows in a while, but I want to say there was something. No, there was, because there's a challenge mission early on where they put snipers in a square, around a smaller square park, and you have to web zip to each one.
Ah, gotcha. Because yeah, that was something that got introduced like after Spider-Man 2. That was always a good mechanic that it's like, why can't somebody make a game that has the web slinging from Spider-Man 2 and a web zip mechanic? That's all I want. Yeah, the game, it doesn't even have to have anything else that I can do after that. I just literally want a game that has Spider-Man 2's web slinging and a web zip mechanic and just a city that I can swing around.
You're just going to find yourself at one point in the game's web zipping between two buildings for 10 minutes for no reason. Yeah,
just because I want to.
Zip, zip.
Well, and to make it really interesting, don't set it in modern day Manhattan. Put it in the Spider-Man 2099 universe.
That would be really interesting.
That would be great.
An open world Spider-Man 2099 would be awesome. The possibilities for web swinging in that would be fantastic.
You don't even have to give me a story.
Yeah.
Just
like
make,
I said, I don't
make
need,
that.
It doesn't even have to have combat. It doesn't have to have anything besides web swinging. That's all I want. If it has other things besides really good... Because I'll be the first to admit it. Besides the web swinging mechanic, there was not a lot of awesome about Spider-Man 2. The rest of Spider-Man 2 was pretty mediocre and not much to write home about.
Yeah.
But the web swinging was that much fun and that damn good. It's like, if you can just recreate that in a game, I don't care what else it has.
Alright, so here's what we need. We need somebody to Kickstarter a game.
Yeah.
That's just Spider-Man Web Slinger.
Just web slinger. That's all. It's just web
don't
slinger.
even tie it to Marvel.
Don't even tie it to anything.
If they want to support later
Spider
on, that'd
Dude
be awesome.
Web Slinger.
Yeah, rope slinger.
Rope Slinger.
to completely avoid all copyright infringements.
Put little grapples on the end.
Yeah, it's little grapple hooks instead of web. Yeah.
He can have like little mechanical wrist-mounted things.
Yeah.
What is he swinging on? They're ropes that are shot from this
From a
wrist-mounted
grapple device.
And
They have a grappling and adhesive grappling end.
tiny
That's
fingers.
it's nanotechnology. It's tiny nanomachines, and it works like an insect leg, where they function as it's the entire outside of the surface is essentially a moldable, pliable surface that functions like a gecko's hand. So it's like when it sticks to something, the nanomachines lock it into every nook and cranny and crevice, and that's how it sticks to stuff.
And then you swing. That's all.
And then you swing.
Yeah.
And that's
Achievements
all
for
that you
swinging.
effing do.
Physics-based.
Yeah, physics-based swinging. That's all it needs to be. Literally, I would pay like $40 for that game.
I don't know about that.
I'll pay full $60.
I would
retail
pay
game.
$40 for that game at least.
Alright, copyright Devin 2015.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's a thing.
That's a thing. That's a
That's
thing
a thing now.
That's a thing.
If Sony makes this game with the next Spider-Man movie or whatever,
If anybody
I'm
ever
suing.
makes this game, you all know where it came from. All three of you that are listening to this. You know where that came from.
All our 12 subscribers,
Yeah.
I think we have.
which I'm pretty sure is you, me, you.
Like I said,
point
the
that out.
three of you that are listening to this that aren't us or our group of friends, you will know if this game ever shows up. You will know where they got the idea. It was our idea.
In some ways, because I'm trying to get into some computer science stuff, and I want to get into some programming. Maybe that's one of the things I should learn how to do is do some of this physics programming. I'll just make a game on our PCs. I'll just throw it out to throw it out for free, open source it, whatever. But I'll put it out there for funsies.
Yeah, for funsies.
That'll be my learning project.
Yeah.
That would be interesting to open source it to see some of the environments people came up with.
Yeah, that would be that could be awesome. It's just to open source the the slinging code and then just create people can just create environments. Like I said, release it on Steam, have it workshop enabled, and maybe the base game $5, and you get the game and you get a level editor. So then you can just you can create levels. And then you can put those levels up on the Steam Workshop, and people can swing through these crazy levels that people come up with, and you can create like some of the levels can just be just swing for the fun of it. Some of the levels you may be able to create a race challenge where it's you have to swing through this path, and it's a pretty difficult thing.
Well, I feel it would be kind of nifty like Mirror's Edge, because did anybody else play Mirror's Edge?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I love
The
that
DLC
That
where
game
they-
was fun.
Yeah, the DLC where they went
DLC
abstract
concept,
with it.
Yeah.
Where there wasn't
Yeah.
buildings and stuff, it was just platforms.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
walls.
Well, it's that's the sort of thing. It's when you release it to the public like that, it's some people are just going to create city levels, and that's awesome. And some people are going to do things like try and recreate real cities that exist in the world, and that's cool if they want to do that. That's awesome. I mean, I'm a little tired of web swinging around New York City, but LA
Manhattan
or
Island.
Seattle or or Tokyo, how fun would those be? Those might be pretty fun also. So it's some people might do things
LA
like we
won't
were
get you
talking
very
about
far.
where they
It's
might
kind
create
of,
might
limited.
create more of a futuristic style city where it's buildings don't exactly have to follow the same rules that they do now. Or people can just go the DLC Mirror's Edge route and just create completely abstract things that seem to take place in some sort of virtual environment instead of a real world place. That would be awesome. Too bad it doesn't exist yet.
I'll work on it eventually, maybe.
Man.
Yeah, probably not.
hey, if I ever get to that, it took me long enough to launch Snapchat, right?
Yeah. How long did that take? Yeah. Good lord.
Years, and that wasn't very complicated.
I feel like the idea for that is older than 3 years, though.
Mine?
Yeah, the Snapchat idea, I feel like we were talking about that 5 years ago at the York house.
Yeah, that's where I was living at the time when I kind had the idea.
Yeah, so that'd be 5 years, not 3.
It was when I was working at Place.
Dude, we moved into the York house November 2007.
I registered the site at the end of 2009.
Oh.
So...
No, yeah, like we had...
You take it from there.
You had that idea before then, though. You definitely had that idea.
I had it in, like,
you
October
started it. You started it before... I feel like it was before then, though.
See, I didn't come... from my own recollection...
I feel like it was before then, for me. I feel like it was something we, like, talked about, and you're like, yeah, this is a great idea. And we were like, yeah, that's a great idea. And then it just kind of, like, you know... went from there. It's just kind of, you know, flatlined after that for a little
Shameless
while.
plug, Snapchat.org.
Hey, I don't care. I've already shamelessly plugged Lag TV, and I don't even know those guys.
What's really weird, though, is I've been looking at it, and I know this had nothing to do with anything we're talking
It's
about.
all right.
But I've been going on...
I feel like we're in the non sequitur portion of the
I think so, too, yeah.
Well, it's funny, I
I've
haven't
been
even
going
brought up
I
the
don't know
thing where I
who's
said
going to
how
the
you
site.
might have something that you'd have
I thought
strongly felt.
I thought it was
It wasn't
Spider-Man
Spider-Man 2. I was not even going to bring that one up. That wasn't even on like the list of thoughts that I had. But then we started talking about environment like traveling, and I was like, and that popped in my head, and I was like, and I know Kyle loves the hell out of that game.
Yep.
I have no idea who's visiting the site, but I'm getting traffic on it. I have like a Facebook page that's just, you know,
Yeah.
but it's only my friends
Yeah.
have it on there, you
Yeah.
know, and it's like, I don't know who's coming to the site and spinning off rooms and using it, but people are, so whatever.
You should
That's what it's there
you
for.
should
Feedback?
plug the YouTube channel on your Snapchat
hell
site.
That should definitely be a thing.
Yes.
Good.
So now I'm curious. What is this thing you had in mind?
I almost
to bring
don't want to
up?
mention it because this could be like a whole other 45-minute conversation in and of
Next
itself. I was going to mention the Mass Effect series. Because there were all of those awesome RPG mechanics in the first one
Okay.
that I loved, and I know you were a fan of as well.
Yeah, no,
That
those
got
were
stripped and gutted in Mass Effect 2 and 3.
Yeah, that was kind of a case of like if the story hadn't been good enough to keep me playing, I probably wouldn't have played 2
Yeah.
because they took the best parts of their game
The
out.
inventory management, the skill system. Oh yeah, no, they took a lot of those good classic RPG mechanics that I loved, and they just took them all out.
Like,
and
don't
I
get
was
me
never
wrong.
a fan of that.
I had a lot of fun with Mass Effect 2, and it's probably, I think, the most polished one they put out, and the best overall in terms of its combination of gameplay, story, and total experience.
Yeah.
Mass Effect 2 probably wins for me.
Yeah.
But Mass Effect 1's mechanics were the best.
Yeah.
I loved having...
I loved the overheat mechanic. Oh my god, I was so f***ing pissed when I got taken out in Mass Effect 2. I was like, this is retarded. I hate you forever. Like, I loved the overheat mechanic because it made it feel like a legitimate, like, futuristic sci-fi game instead of just like, this is Call of Duty in space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
I hated.
That made more sense, I think. But, I don't know, when developers streamline stuff from a bigger audience, because I feel like the first Mass Effect...
I'm never a fan of that.
They put it out for, you know, sci-fi nerds, people who are
They
already
put it out for sci-fi and BioWare fans.
Yeah.
Because
BioWare
especially
fans,
the skill system, even aesthetically, like the way the skill menu looked was very reminiscent of Knights of the Old Republic.
yeah.
Very reminiscent. It had the same thing where it's like the bars that had you added on a roughly squarish rectangle each time you upped it, and every couple of squares there was a special symbol for some new thing you unlocked at that particular level. It's like, that is very, very reminiscent of Knights of the Old Republic. It's like, I feel like that, like, the first Mass Effect I felt was, like, very much made for, like, sci-fi fans, old like BioWare fans, like people who are really into like the BioWare style RPGs, especially the type of RPG they had started to develop with Coder, where it's like they took their old experience with like the Baldur's Gate series and like more turn-based RPG and like brought it into, you know, a more like a 3D environment instead of like just the same old top-down isometric view that they had been working with for a while.
Yeah. Well, here's kind of something they introduced in the third Mass Effect game. It was for, I guess, people like our artist, Vel, who lacks the manual dexterity to play anything.
Yeah, they had the different difficulties where it's like if you wanted to play this for the gameplay, there was you chose that option. It's like if you wanted to play this pretty much for the story, you could choose that option. It was and they would gut all of the complex game mechanics out of it and make it pretty easy. So it's literally you could just play the story.
Yeah, they had already taken out the RPG mechanics we're talking about. But I think what it did was it kind of streamlined.
Well, I think it was I personally have not played Mass Effect 3 for reasons, but from what I understand, didn't they doesn't it auto level up your characters? You don't pick
there's
the skills that your characters get.
I didn't ever play either mode, but there was two ways to play it. There was one that made it more of a shooter.
Yeah.
That the game would make all the story decisions for you.
Yeah, and you just played the you what you mostly got about it was actually playing the shootouts and stuff like that.
And then there was a way to play it where it was the opposite, where it's the gameplay was maybe toned down or simplified.
Yeah.
But I don't remember
you
exactly
got to make all the story decisions, and the story was. I never like I said, I never actually played it, and I never none of my friends ever played it that way that I know that played it, so I don't know exactly what they did either. But I mean, and I understand and you can take the first from what I understand, you can take the first Mass Effect and you can have it do that still.
Really?
You just I don't see not in the game. It's the game that they released. But I'm saying,
yes, that's what I was getting at.
I have no difficulty conceiving the first Mass Effect having that same theory where it's it makes all of the leveling decisions for you. You didn't have the complex skill tree. It's just when you leveled up, it picked your skills for you. It picked your stuff for you. It automatically equipped stuff for you. It automatically equipped good equipment for you, or automatically sold anything that wasn't good equipment. It's I can see them using Mass Effect 1 and its game engine and game mechanics and still doing that. And I don't understand why. And
that's the route I wish they had gone. Instead of removing it from the game entirely. It's if you want to appeal to an audience that doesn't have the familiarity necessary to access those systems, put them behind a wall. Let the player toggle a thing that says, well, the game's going to do all this and you don't ever have to look at it.
Yeah.
That's fine, because then both groups of people are getting what they want out of the game.
The way I feel with dumbing down game mechanics to reach larger audiences, I always think of the Mark Twain quote about censorship. And that's telling a man he can't eat a steak because a baby can't handle a glass of milk.
Yeah, that's a pretty
that's the Mark Twain. That's a quote from Mark Twain that I always find extremely applicable in a lot of areas, and he said it about censorship, especially in books. I don't know why I had such a hard time thinking of that word. Books. Well, I got so complicated with that. Reading. But reading. So 1896. But I feel like the same thing can apply to these games the Elder Scrolls series or the Mass Effect series, where it's you see them taking some of their game mechanics and systematically dumbing them down over the course of the game's run, over the course of a series of games, where it's I feel like that's the same thing, where it's especially ever since Mass Effect 3 came out and they had that option at the beginning where it's why do more games not do this? Why don't you just
was brilliant. I actually, that's one of the parts of Mass Effect 3 that I think was really, really innovative.
And I want to say I've seen similar things in games in the past, mainly in RPGs. I can't remember specific games off the top of my head, but I definitely remember some RPGs that have like those complex skill systems where you could select like an auto level up option, where it was every time you leveled up, it would just pick your stuff for you. You know, you picked a class at the beginning of the game, and every time you leveled up, it would just pick everything for you based on, you know, the developer's optimal selections that they tell the system to choose for you for your class. And it's like, I would rather have an RPG have that option and use that to reach broader audiences, where it's like, we can have the game do a lot of stuff for you, instead of dumbing everything down so that the people like me who love when RPGs have all of those complicated mechanics that I can screw around with and, you know, really create my character. It's like, I want to do all that. Just because this person who's only been playing video games for like a year, you know, who like just got into video games, just because they can't do it, why do you have to completely remove it from your game? Like, why not just give them the option for the game to make those hard choices for them?
Yeah, I feel that gets back to what we were talking about with
it's like with
Spider-Man 2.
Donkey Kong Country Returns. It's a really, really fun platformer on the Wii. One of the things in that game, and this was something that Nintendo first started introducing with, I believe, I don't remember if it was the first new Super Mario Brothers, but there's the concept of, if you die enough times in an area, in Donkey Kong Country Returns, it will pop up with this little thing when you spawn at the last checkpoint. It will pop up with this thing where it's like, it will literally play the rest of the level for you, and you will complete you will be able to finish the level and move on from then on out. You will it will advance you, and you will get to move past the level. But it's like, if you are sucking terribly at this one spot, you can have the game completed for you. Now, like, you know, you don't get like the legitimate. Oh God, Chips Challenge. Oh God, that game.
Bummer.
That's like, you
It's
don't.
like having a tough time.
Yeah, it's like you don't get like you don't get a legitimate completion mark on the level, but you get to move past it. And it's like, that's awesome, because that game actually gets pretty challenging at some points. But even if you're not that good at it, like, you can still try and move past if you want. I mean, granted, if you're not, like, if you're just like really, really bad at platformers, you're basically just going to be playing that game to let the game play itself for you. But, but, you know, with platformers, it's a harder thing to do that. It's like, there's not a lot of complex choices to make in platformers. It's about your actual skill involved. Yeah, so it's like, if you're bad at that,
to jump or not to jump.
Yeah, it's like, if you're bad at that, there's not much that the game can do to compensate other than just play the level for you.
Right.
But things with Mass Effect, where it's like, if you're, you know, don't really want or care about your skill selection, just let the game do it for you. Because that's not something that, you know, that's not a skill thing. That's more of a, you know, that's more of a metagaming and a thought of, okay, I want my character to be able to do this and this and this. Yeah. So it's like, I want to level up these skills and I want to level up these skills, where it's, you know, you're less impacted by a bad decision and it's more of a personal choice in that manner.
Well, I feel like I've seen RPGs, like you said, have had that for a while. But it's usually something that pops up at the level up screen.
Yeah.
I would like to see something more like that Mass Effect 3 system.
It's just like you pick it at the start.
At the beginning.
And it
like,
does the whole game for you that way.
There are 3 ways that we've set up for you to play this.
Yeah.
Or, you know, maybe more, depending on how they want to tailor it. But they give you essentially the cinematic experience where you get to make all the story decisions and just kind of watch the game play for the most part. You'll have to participate in some way.
Turns it into more of a visual novel than a direct interactive game.
Well, that brings up another interesting point. Have you seen the things that they've released for both Mass Effect 2 and now I just saw they put one out for Mass Effect 3.
The comic things?
Yeah.
Oh, they had those. They had those. They had the one for Mass Effect 2 that covered the events of Mass Effect 1, and it was basically just a little comic book novel thing where you got to make the choices from Mass Effect 1, so you didn't have to play all the way back through it to get the different choice options.
Yes,
and then they put one out for Mass Effect 3 that was the events of Mass Effect 2. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about. So that way, if you want to, because there's things in Mass Effect 3 you can't see unless you made certain decisions in 2 and 1.
No, yeah, I think that was a fairly decent. I thought that was a fairly decent thing. I remember I remember because our friend Tape, he got into Mass Effect at Mass Effect 2. He had never really played Mass Effect 1, and he got it. So when he got Mass Effect 2, I was like, oh, he got Mass Effect because he pre-ordered Mass Effect 2, so he got Mass Effect 1 at that point. And so he played through Mass Effect 1 once, and then when Mass Effect 2 came out, he played through Mass Effect 2, and then to get the different, choices in Mass Effect 2, he used that comic book thing to make the different choices in Mass Effect 1 and then create a save file with, oh, okay, now you've made this and this and this choice instead of, the previous choices that you had made. Yeah.
I thought that was a nifty little way to...
I thought that
especially when you're
for that game specifically, where arguments could be made that they did a really poor job of this, but we'll leave those arguments where they are. Where it was like your choices in previous games impacted later games in the series. That was a really nice mechanic because that way, you could play through the game once how you really wanted to play it, and then to get the different options in the sequels, you could just essentially hit the highlights.
Yeah.
Yeah. Without having to go through the first game again if you didn't want to. If you want to, you still can. And then if you don't want to, you can just, hit all the high points, make the big decisions, the ones that actually really, impact future games.
When they put it out for 2, I was kind of like, well, alright, that's kind of nifty. You won't have to go back and play 1 to get these different things. But when they put it out for 3... that's when I was like, because I had forgotten about it at that point. When I saw it on the marketplace, I was like, oh, I remember this. That's actually kind of nice at this point, because if I wanted to see how this played out in the third game, to not save the counts or whatever the Mass Effect 1 decision is, I gotta go back.
Yeah, you gotta play Mass Effect 1
gameplay,
and then you have to play Mass Effect 2 with that imported save, and then finally you can go into Mass Effect 3. Yeah, no, that would have been quite the draw. Quite the dredge through a lot of game just to change 1 or 2 decisions too. Well, I think we can call it here now. Now that I planned on stopping the video 20 minutes ago, but then you wanted to know about what my other.
You can't say I didn't.
That's true. That's
I didn't
true.
Bring this up.
I kind of set myself up for that one.
I haven't played Mass Effect.
Hence, the
loss of silence.
You know what? I really liked the first one, and I'm not with Tymo. I stopped liking Mass Effect after the first one. And I haven't even played 3, so...
I enjoyed them all the way through. 3 kills it for me.
For reasons.
Yeah, I'm sure we could do a whole video.
Oh, no, I'm sure we could.
We need to invite Azalea if we're going to do that, though, because I want to see that go for 3 hours. And it will just be her talking.
Oh, no, yeah, it definitely will. It definitely will. But I think we can call it for now. I think we can call it here. I think we've had a fairly successful soapbox. If anybody can draw anything from this, it's...
hours.
It's make a goddamn rope slinger game.
I figured out the name for it. Slinger Man.
Slinger Man. I love it. I love it. So that's ours. If any of you
Copyright.
Copyright.
Scary Uncle Devin.
Copyright. Scary Uncle Devin. April 8th, 2013. Yeah, no, that's. I think that's what we could draw from this. Is navigating environments is fun. the inclusion of a freeform jump button can be entertaining.
Slinger Man
And
1.0.
and bad game mechanics are bad.
Slinger Man 1.0
and good
will be
game
a
mechanics
flash
should be
game
kept.
that really isn't that exciting.
Huh?
Slinger Man 1.0 will be a flash game that really isn't that
It
exciting.
really sucks, but
But it'll have great physics because I'll use Box 2D.
but
in
we
it.
can get a cult following with that.
Yeah, that's where you start.
And
Slinger
then
Man
we
2D,
kickstart. Then we
then
kickstart.
Slinger Man 3D.
Yeah, then we kickstart Slinger Man 3D, and that's where the real shit comes out. That's when it gets really awesome. All right. Well, thank you for anyone that did join us for this episode of Press A to Climb Soapbox. This definitely was longer than the last episode, but I hope you enjoyed however long this is going to be. It's about probably going to be just short of 2 hours now. I am Nasty Man.
Tymo?
Devin.
And we hope that you enjoyed all the rest of the videos on our channel. We hope that you join us next time on Press A to Climb Soapbox.